Welcome to the very first episode of Auction Insiders, the podcast that gives you the inside tips and guidance on property auctions across England and Wales. I'm Louise.
And I'm Anthony, and in today's episode we'll break down how to navigate your first property auction with confidence. Let's get started.
Well, it's all very exciting, Ant. Shall we start with telling our listeners, or soon to be listeners, a little bit about ourselves?
I think that's a good start.
Over to you then, Ant.
Okay, so I'm Anthony, and I'm an auctioneer. I'm a director in town and country property auctions. I'm a solicitor by trade. I practiced for many, many years, but now and probably for the last 3 years, I've worked in the world of auctions under our town and country property auctions franchise, and we're busy selling properties.
We are indeed. Great, and I'm Louise. I'm an experienced property solicitor with a passion for all things property. So over the years, I've helped clients navigate the complexities of property law and have now somehow randomly found myself with a gavel and new skill set as an auctioneer, and I absolutely love it. I also invest in properties, so I know firsthand how it is to be a listener of these types of podcasts. It's so important to gain as much knowledge as possible and learn from other people's experiences, which is why Ant and I are keen to share our insider knowledge, tips, strategy, and current marketing insights with you lovely lot.
Yeah, that's right. And we'll be inviting guests along the way to cover property investors' experiences, both good and bad, as well as some guests that specialise in more niche areas of auctions and auction finance.
There's a little caveat here that the information, tips and guidance is based on the knowledge that we have as online auctioneers with top town and country property auctions, and some auction houses may different.
Yeah, we always need that caveat, particularly being lawyers. So let's grab a seat and dive in today's episode, where we can introduce you to the fascinating world of property auctions.
I feel like we need a drum roll, Anne. Let's go. So, the very first question, what are property auctions? Let's start with that super basic question. But Anne, if you can start us off with an overview, what is a property auction?
Okay, well, a property auction, well, the kind of proof's in the pudding, I suppose, isn't it? And it does what it says on the tin. That's the word I was looking for. Anyway, everybody knows what an auction is, or hopefully everybody does. You'll all be familiar with the likes of eBay. You see something on there, you bid, and if at the end of the auction, you're the highest bidder, it's yours. It's exactly the same with property. So we have an online auction. We run one a month. We normally start at 10 in the morning, finish at 5 in the afternoon. So that's the auction window. And if at the end of that window, you're the highest bidder and you've met the reserve, you've won that lot. That property is then yours.
Brilliant. Okay, so I guess on the basis of that, then it would be a good time for us just to iron out some auction terminologies, just to make you familiar with what you might see if you are on an auction website. Firstly, we've got guide prices. So the guide price is what the property is usually advertised for on the more popular portals like Rightmove and on the market and so on. And the guide price is usually an indicative price of the reserve, in that it will be usually like a 10% window between the two. So moving on to the reserve price, that is what the property will ultimately sell for. That's the minimum that the vendor is wanting to accept for that property, and you'll need to meet that reserve in order to be a successful bidder. Legal packs is also something that you will be asked to review prior to bidding at an auction, and we highly recommend that you do this as part of your due diligence for properties. And legal packs will contain all of the legal titles to the property, or should include all of the legal title to the property. Searches maybe sometimes, but it's kind of like the handbook for that particular property. So everything that you need to know about that property from a legal perspective ought to be in that legal pack, including the contract, which is the most important. Which I guess leads us on to types of auctions. There are different types of auctions. Most recently, there's been an entry of a modern method of auction, and there's also something called a traditional auction, which is what Ant and I tend to do with our day-to-day. But modern method is something that's been brought in recently to allow buyers with finance the ability to have a period of time. So you pay, let's say, £6,000 as a premium, and then you get given a 56-day window in which to exchange and complete. But really all that buyer is doing is putting down a premium, or paying a premium to the auctioneer for an exclusivity period. Whereas the traditional method of auctions is very fast paced, because it's all about this 28-day completion dates. Hammer goes down, you've got 28 days in which to complete, which is good benefits for both sides, really. And in terms of the actual auctions themselves, whether traditional or modern method, they could be conditional or unconditional. Vast majority of our auctions will be unconditional auctions in that there are no conditions attached to that auction. So basically the hammer goes down, like I say, and you complete within 28 days. Sometimes some of those contracts can, to allow for that little bit of flexibility for some buyers, it can be altered to add some conditions. For instance, if there is a mortgage that's required, they may well have a condition whereby the contract is subject to mortgage or subject to survey or something like that. But that we don't tend to have them very often in our style of auctions, just because we're trying to minimize, I think, the dates in which the completion will take place, so that we've got security for the vendors.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Lou. That's a great summary of the different types of auction. And most of you out there will be familiar with Homes Under the Hammer and those types of programs where people turn up in a hotel conference room
Love a
and
bit of
bid on
Homes Under the Hammer.
properties. Yeah, yeah. So I mean that's how it's always worked up until fairly recently. So an auctioneer hires a room. They've got a list of properties. They hand out catalogues and they start the bidding against each lot. And people put up a hand and bid and so on. And again, at the end of the window, it's sold to the highest bidder. We don't run in-room auctions. And in fact, very few auctioneers now do run in-room auctions. And part of that's because the costs involved in hiring a room and so on. But actually, probably more importantly, with an online platform, it's available to everybody from the comfort of their own armchair. But also from an auctioneer's perspective, we know who is likely to bid on a property before we start the auction. And of course, if you're in a room and you haven't had people register, which you wouldn't do, in an in-room auction, then you just don't know who's going to turn up. So what are online auctions? It's essentially a secure, real-time live auction on the internet. We do ours by website. As I said earlier, we have a bidding window, usually starts at 10 o'clock in the morning, finishes at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And then anybody who's registered with us then is able to place a bid against that particular property, as you would do on eBay. And as the time counts down, if there are a number of bidders bidding, the bidding window will then extend by 60 seconds. So once that bidding window is concluded, if the highest bidder has met that reserve price, which is that minimum price that Lou mentioned earlier that the seller's prepared to accept, then effectively the gavel falls and that buyer is obligated then to complete. So they've won the lot, and under the terms and conditions of the auction, they have to complete that purchase within 28 days. Now, what we'll have done is, because they've registered with us, before we authorise them to bid, we will have taken a security deposit from their credit card, which is £2,000. Now, that is returned to anybody who doesn't bid or is unsuccessful on the lot. But if they're the winning bidder, the £2,000 is taken from the card. They then pay the balance of 5% and then complete within 28 days. Okay, so it's a quick process, but I guess it's really important for that buyer to understand that by bidding, they're entering into a legal contract.
Yeah, it's really important that people are familiar with that, isn't it, really? So I guess we should move on to why would someone want to buy at auction? And I guess there's a number of reasons why people come to auction, especially I think kind of like the sign of the times, isn't it? I think, and people are moving more towards auctions. And just being so disheartened with private treaty perhaps sometimes because it takes so long for purchases to go through. Whereas with auctions, you've obviously got as we've referred to a number of times now, it's that transparency, it's a fixed completion date. So you've got something to work towards all the time, and it's something that's easily managed. And the one thing that I find about auctions is a huge benefit is being able to see the legal pack up front on a property. And we always kind of say it's like, you wouldn't go and buy a car unless you've seen the handbook of that car. And I think sometimes you waste a lot of time, or you can go, a number of weeks down a process of buying a house private treaty for something not to be quite right. And then, chains start falling through and things like that. Whereas with auctions, we preempt those problems, or if we see a problem, we can provide a solution there and then. So the packs come complete. date, the solicitors are able to review those packs, and deal with any kind of like queries before the auction. And then it's good for everybody, isn't it? Like the hammer goes down and it's 28-day completion. Yeah, there's a huge amount of benefits, I think, for that. So I think that's the reason why people would come to auction. And I guess from a buyer's perspective, they also know that they're more likely going to get a good deal. Would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, most buyers are investors, and they're in it for business reasons. Usually, they're not going to let the heart rule the head, and they want to make something out of it. And whether that's a strong rental yield, adding to a buy to let portfolio, or they're an investor who wants to renovate and sell on, there's got to be a margin in it for them. So they're looking to buy at auction because there's that margin at the end.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously on a traditional private treaty sale, there often isn't that in there.
No, and I think from a vendor's perspective, some people might think, well, that's put me off from auctions actually, because I don't want an investor to come in and try and knock me down on my price. But then that comes down to the vendor's motivation, really. And for some vendors, so auctions may not be for everybody, but if you need a security of a sale, if you need a fixed completion date for a number of reasons, then that's when from a vendor's perspective, they may be willing to take a hit on the sale price in order to achieve a quicker completion for them. And we have it all the time. I mean, we get turnkey properties. It doesn't mean that every property that comes along to us are your stereotypical auction property and that they're derelict or there's something wrong with them. In actual fact, we've got a whole range of properties that are beautiful and, like I say, turnkey. And motivations for sellers for those could be that they are looking to relocate, they've got another job lined up, or they've had a chain fall through, but they still want to buy the house that they're looking to purchase. So yeah, there are a number of reasons I think why people come to auctions, both buyers and vendors, because you can marry two people together for a really good deal that suits everybody. Because they've still got I suppose, a degree of flexibility with them too.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course they have. Yeah. And I guess that leads on to where the start of the journey for a vendor. So we get people coming to us, and sometimes they've found us online, sometimes they've been recommended, sometimes they've been introduced to us by an estate agent. But the very first question I ask them is, why are you looking to sell your property by auction?
Yeah, it's key.
Okay, and there are various reasons that might be, and it's really important for us as auctioneers to establish at an early stage what that vendor's motivation is. Okay, so is it, as Lou said, that they've had 3 sales collapse? Is it that they've inherited a property and they just want shut of it and to generate the cash for the estate? Sometimes there may be a particular issue with that property that means that it's not going to be easy for them to sell it on the open market. There's always a motivation. Now, I'll always explain to a vendor from the off that they're not going to achieve open market value through auction sale. They've got to be realistic on the price. So often, before we've even spoke to them, if it's a lead that we've had from an agent or we know the property address, we'll do our research. So we'll go and check comparables. We'll check the standard desktop, valuation tools, and we'll work out what that property would likely achieve on the open market.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there's a rule of thumb that one can apply that says that you discount your open market value by about 20%.
It's a rule of thumb, yeah.
But it is flexible, okay? So perhaps a vendor that wants the quickness and the certainty, but is prepared to sit it out for a little bit and test the market, we would apply a lesser reduction to open market value.
Yeah, it's those turnkey ones, isn't it? Like you mentioned before, because the condition of the property is superb and it doesn't warrant, I think, that kind of reduction. It's just a matter of just being able to get investors on the table, because usually those that are done up like that are investors looking for buy-to-let, so they can rent them out straight away. So
that's right, yeah. And some buyers will want to buy tomorrow. They don't want to wait for the auction.
Yeah.
They've got a particular need for that property at that time. So it's not a case of applying a standard discount and making it live. We'll talk to the vendor about their circumstances, and obviously we'll use our own industry and local knowledge, and then we'll come to an agreement with the vendor as to what we think that property will achieve in their time frame.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then once we've done that, and obviously they're happy with that the process, they understand what's involved, we'll then list their property, and that works in exactly the same way as it would if they were instructing the local high street estate agent. So we'll go and have a look, we'll take a photographs, we'll provide a detailed description, where appropriate we'll do drone photography and videography, 360 tours, video walkthroughs, the whole suite of the marketing tools that are available to us, we will apply to that property. And then we list it in our auction. And typically we'll have one auction a month. It's usually the last Wednesday of every month. We suggest to a vendor that they allow us a minimum of 4 weeks marketing lead-in time.
Yeah.
Because obviously what we want to do is attract as many prospective buyers as we can, because the more prospective buyers we have, ultimately that's going to achieve them the best price.
Yeah, exactly.
Either come auction night or, by way of pre-auction offer. So we usually ask for a minimum of 4 weeks, but we can list, in theory, we could take on a property tomorrow and stick it in an auction the next day. But it works better when there's a longer lead in time. So we get it listed, it goes on Rightmove, on the market, it goes on a website, we circulate all the details to, the huge database of buyers that we have who are always on the lookout for their next purchase. And, we wait and see what happens. Now, we're always monitoring the interest in that property. So it's not a case of let's list it, wait 4 weeks and see what happens on auction night.
Yes.
We're monitoring
Every day.
the interest in that property every single day, whether that's inquiries coming in, stats from Rightmove. We will be reporting that back to a vendor.
It's so fast paced that we have to be that proactive, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And obviously, we want to engage at an early stage with prospective buyers, because sometimes buyers will look at a property, they'll see it on Rightmove, but they'll make no contact with us at all. And then in situations where we've sold that property before auction, they'll pick up the phone and say, I was going to bid on that.
Yeah.
Why has it gone off? So it's important for them that as a buyer, but it's important for us to understand the level of interest in that property.
Hugely.
For that early engagement.
Yeah, because obviously we want to try and get the maximum price for the vendors as well. So it's making that informed choice, isn't it?
Well, we
Whether or not to
do,
pre-auction or...
that sort of valuation that we've provided at the outset, that is not sort of set in stone. There has to be flexibility sometimes, because if we've got a property and we've listed it and we're getting early feedback from buyers regarding its value, and it appears that we're not going to be able to achieve a price at the reserve, we'll make those adjustments with the vendor's agreements.
Yeah, because sometimes the market very much determines, what the price inevitably is going to be, doesn't it? Really,
it does.
I mean, sometimes you'll find that either it's private treaty or auctions, which is why when we're talking to our vendors, we have to, just don't discount auctions, obviously get prices for private treaty and things like that, but then you make an informed choice for you as to what's going to be the best method of sale for you. Can you sit and wait for nearly 6 to 9 months or a year to be on private treaty, or for a slightly discounted price, would you come to auctions for the security? But it's good to have that conversation.
Yeah, it's you've got to keep an open mind. I mean, I think that goes to anybody selling a property, and we're not trying to sway people away from listing with an estate agent on the open market.
No.
And we've got really great relationships with lots of estate agents nationally, but there are always circumstances when it's probably better for that vendor to try the auction route from the off.
Yes.
Yeah. And there's loads of success stories that we have, and we've been able to sell properties very quickly at pretty much market value sometimes. If we've got the right property and we've got the right level of interest, we'll achieve that market value, if not above, for that vendor. But the advantage they've got is the money's in the bank account within 28 days.
It was only last month, I think we did one, it was over £20,000 over the
It
actual
was.
reserve,
Well, I think we listed it on a Thursday, and by the Monday it sold.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
That's just one
Incredible
example.
results.
So if we've got the right property and we've got a motivated seller, we'll get that property sold quickly for them.
Yeah.
But we'll talk a lot more about that, won't we, Lou, in future podcasts. I mean, this is episode 1, and it really is just about
Once you get
trying
talking,
to
it feels like
explain, what we're all about. But over the course of the next few few weeks, hopefully we'll be able to give you some more real life examples. We'll have some
Exactly.
guests on. We might even persuade some of our vendors to come on and talk about
Exactly.
their experiences.
Yeah,
So
and
there's
buyers as
loads,
well. There's
loads
loads to
come,
talk about.
loads to talk about.
Yeah.
It's really exciting.
Strategies as well. Get some people
Yep.
that know the auction finance route. So
Absolutely.
it's like we're here for the guidance, here for the tips, here for the strategy.
Yeah, so hopefully you've remained tuned in until the bitter end, and yeah, we can't wait to talk to you more in future podcasts.
No, so stay tuned for our next episode, and we'll dive deeper into the best strategies for bidding at property auctions. But until then, happy bidding.
Bye bye.